Okay, many thanks. Buenos dias, Eska. Yeah, the Giant's Causeway, another iconic site, a site that's volcanic in origin and quite spectacular. Just take a moment to enjoy the image of the columns there. So the first statement really speaks for itself. Giant's Causeway and Causeway Coast, Northern Ireland's only UNESCO World Heritage Site, only one of only two in the UK, because of their geology. Yeah. And then the second, it's one of the best examples of columnar basalt in the world, and a key site in proving the origins of extrusive igneous rocks dating back to the 18th century. And I'm going to let Patrick talk more about the history of the site. So my job is to give you that geological context. I want to acknowledge my colleague Kirsten Lemon, who helped to write the case for this site, and Michael Dempster, who was also involved. Kirsten is with me at the Geological Survey of Northern Ireland, and Michael works for the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. So I'm going to cover some aspects of geoconservation as well, which I think are really important in all of this. So here's a map showing the location of the site. There are two polygons here, and what we're looking at here is the North County Antrim coast, or the Causeway coast in Northern Ireland. The site boundary is the blue polygon there, but the red boundary here is one of what has been designated as a site of special scientific interest by Northern Ireland government. So you'll read, I'm not going to go through it all here, but there are various designations, various levels of protection afforded to this area of coastline because it has been recognized as being incredibly important and significant for its geology, for its history of geology. And if we turn to the geological context, if we look at this globally, it's part of the North Atlantic igneous province, a large igneous province, one of many on the Earth's surface. But you can see the scale of that large igneous province here, 1,000 kilometers there, so 2,000 kilometers in diameter. And the rocks of Northern Ireland belong to a suite of rocks referred to as the Antrim lava group. They're flood basalts, and if we look at the map here, they are the largest onshore remnant of the British and Irish Paleocene igneous province. So we can see there's County Antrim with its Antrim Plateau. The Causeway site is right up here on the North Antrim coast, and these equally important Scottish islands of Mull and Skye and Arran, various incredible places that help to define in particular, igneous processes. Now this is just a small excerpt of a geological map published by the Geological Survey of Northern Ireland in 1968. And the memoir that accompanied this map suggested that there was a river valley formed in this position. This is the Giant's Causeway here, and this is what determined the actual ponding of lava and the formation of these iconic columns. Now, some recent work by a good friend at the Ulster Museum, Mike Sims, published in 2022, points probably a lot more sensibly towards the activity of faults during and after volcanism in determining the disposition of these rocks at the Giant's Causeway. And yeah, let's just enjoy some images of these columns, famed for their incredible regularity, various numbers of sides ranging from 3, and I think there might be one with 7. And they have various features that have been described, the colonnade and tablature, and it's kind of nice that this has happened. We've heard lots of things about Italian geology, but this Romanesque colonnade and tablature arrangement. I'm going to pass over to Patrick at this point. So, okay.
I'm delighted to be here this morning talking about the Giant's Causeway and the Causeway Coast and the history relating to it. And it's really a story about geoconservation, about geotourism, as well as the understanding of the nature of basalt through time. It was a site that was first visited by people many, many centuries ago, but it only started to get recognition in the late 1600s when various visitors went to Northeast Ireland, which is quite remote, and started to publish illustrations and some descriptions of the physicality of the site. And you've got there on the left-hand side Christopher Cole, 1694, somewhat fanciful of the Giant's Causeway itself. And then Edwin Sands, a couple of years later, published, I think, in the Royal Society, what he calls a true prospect of the Giant's Causeway with more of the coast. And I thought it was interesting in that you've also got some indication of the various columns and the number of sides of these columns as well. They didn't necessarily try to work out what was going on, what was the nature of this material. There was some more physicality in terms of its drawing. The site became really very well known when the Dublin Society gave an artist, Susanna Drury, in 1740, gave her a premium of £25 to go to Northern Ireland, go to the northeast of Ireland, and to paint the views that she saw. And she produced on vellum a number of very large-scale paintings. I think there were at least 4 of them. Some are now in the Ulster Museum. And they show 2 prospects, one from the east and one from the west. And that may have been really valuable, but the importance of these views was, in fact, they were taken on and they were engraved by a French engraver in London and then distributed widely. And you can see this engraving here. This is a version from 1777 that I am lucky enough to be able, I actually bought it the other day. It is a beautiful piece of artwork. It measures about 1 metre by half a metre in size. And it was widely distributed across Europe and also got into encyclopedias and various other things. So people started to recognize that this was a site of great interest. On the left-hand side, you can see this view. This is probably the better-known east prospect that when you go and visit today, this is what most people would look at. And it was also reversed in an encyclopedia. So it was widely distributed. And that allowed people to start to visit. And we had various people like John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, visited. Humphrey Davy visited as well and started to think about what was going on. So the work of Susanna Drury is instrumental in devising and promoting this site, and even indeed tourism. Look at the ladies over there and the gentlemen, early tourists. We've also got here a view of Benmore Head, and there on Little Island you've got people pointing out the geological structures. So what about the geology and what did they think of it? Well, at the time there was a debate over the nature of basalt. people like Werner advocated that they were sediments, and there was a following of those. The Neptunists, or we could call them the watermen, which is a rather nice term, and they felt that this basalt was a deposit. Yet at the same time, they recognized that lava was volcanic, but not similar to basalt. So there was a conundrum. Yet there were others who felt that these were volcanic, as we heard earlier. And in Ireland, the major players in this debate were these two men here. On the right-hand side, we have William Hamilton, who was a volcanist. I don't know who that is, but anyway. We have a volcanist who described the Causeway coast. He described the various natures of it. He compared it with other sites as well and advocated for its volcanic origin. On the left-hand side, we had William Richardson. There, you can see him. He was interested in agriculture. He's got a scythe there. He's clearly a man you don't mess with. He was a fellow of Trinity College, and he also was a cleric up in Tyrone in Northern Ireland, and spent his summer holidays here. And he felt because he was a local, he could advocate for the site, and nobody else really should contradict him because he was a local. So what did he say? Well, he argued through the transactions of the Royal Irish Academy that there was no cone. You couldn't see a cone at Antrim. He said the beds are flat. He said you had fossils between, and we now know that you had plants in these laterites as well. So, and later he discovered ammonites in the basalt further west at Portrush. Material was sent to Edinburgh. It was John Hall took it, he melted it. He said that when you actually recrystallize it, it's the same material. So he was clearly showing that it was volcanic in origin. And Desmarais, and we've heard of Desmarais just earlier from Kathleen, when he saw the engravings, he suddenly recognized that you could actually, that the Giant's Causeway was in fact volcanic. And while there we can't see any lava flows, theoretically, but we see the columns. In his map, you can see that clearly he's got flows of lava with the columns at the end. And so what we're largely seeing in the Giant's Causeway is we're seeing those terminations of those columns, terminations of those lava flows. And so very quickly, by about 1812, the ideas of Richardson and the watermen had evaporated away, and the volcanic nature of the Giant's Causeway and the Causeway coast was fully recognized. But it was a debate, and that's what science is. It's a debate. We argue about things, we look at evidence, and the ideas of Richardson, while are interesting, he felt they were based on good observations but different interpretations. I will hand you over to Mark to finish off.
All right, thank you very much. So the main arguments for the Giant's Causeway as an IUGS 100 site. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of only two in the UK, again based on geological heritage. And it's part of this much larger site of special scientific interest. It's a national nature reserve. That linkage of geology with ecology, so important as we move forward as a planet. Geodiversity as the silent partner to biodiversity, we've got to sell that. It's a site of special, the North Antrim coast, special area of conservation as well. And it's this largest onshore remnant of the British and Irish Paleocene igneous province within the North Atlantic igneous province. So we can learn about these large igneous provinces by looking at these rocks. And as Patrick was saying, this was the centre of some fierce debate since the late 18th century involving the Neptunists, these watermen. That's how I'm learning. It's great. I love this stuff. and the volcanists. Those basalt columns providing evidence to support the volcanist theory and the origin of extrusive igneous rocks. And yeah, geotourism. Did it start in Northern Ireland? I'm not sure, but there were certainly people getting off boats. Did they do a risk assessment? I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so they had an interest in landscape tourism, and that was fed by this heated scientific debate and the dissemination of information. So thank you very much.